Social Media University. All right, John, how's it going, man?
Hey, what's up, brother? Good to be here.
Yeah, so you're in Texas now. First of all, when we get into it, I want to hear how has that transition been moving from, because you've been a bit all over the states now, but what's Texas been like for you?
Oh man, Texas has been fun. The weather's warm. I hear it gets way hotter, so we shall see. But for right now, I'm in Austin specifically, and there are a lot of people moving from the Bay, from New York, from LA, and it just feels like something special is brewing here,
Mm.
and a lot of people work in all kinds of interesting fields. So yeah, I'm excited to roll my sleeves up and stay weird, like this is the tagline of the city. And yeah, just lend a hand to the growing city. See what we can do here.
Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so many people are moving there. You're right. And you're there for a specific reason. So obviously, we're going to talk tons about social, but I would love for you to share why you're there and what you're building in Austin right now.
Yeah. So I recently co-founded a company called Loop, which is a very interesting company. We are a mission-driven company, specifically selling insurance, auto insurance.
Mhm.
And the way that auto insurance has been done as of late is pretty archaic, is pretty old school, and it gives a bunch of young people and all different kinds of communities not only unfair rates, but just old school service. And I feel like we, as a community, as a generation, expect more from our the companies that we support. Expect more from an experience perspective. Expect more from a social responsibility perspective. So at Loop, we're bringing the people what they want. It's a really love first type of insurance company, and relevant to this discussion, it is a very social first company. So rather than like just beat you over the head with jingles on TV, we are
Yeah.
coming from the ground up and really building an organic content strategy and banking on that fueling our virality and distribution versus a lot of paid ad stuff.
That's so cool. Because obviously, like, there's serious need for what you're bringing to the table, but it's even cooler that you're going about it a different way. So you're not trying to be like everybody pumping jingles in your face. And I saw that clip where, and I thought it was so cool because you're like all the major insurance companies, they hide behind a character. And there's a reason they're hiding behind that character. Can you share that story here?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if you think of, the insurance companies, they all have like these super hollow caricatures. They have
Mm.
like Flo and the Geico and, the ostrich. And it feels like someone who's like desperately trying to like, ha, you see, I'm human. And it just like feels a little extra. And when you stop to think about it, it actually makes you wonder. It made me wonder, well, why are they so like over the top like that? And when you
Mm.
look into the business model, you actually learn that, you know, the way that they make money in insurance is not nefarious. It's not illegal. It's a regulated industry. However, um, a lot of consumers don't get fair rates as of the way that things are set up. And
Mm.
a lot of the profits that are generated in insurance come from them collecting your money up front and then investing that money in the stock market. And so I almost, to boil it down simply, I almost feel like there's a guilt that insurance carriers have of like
Mm.
how they make their money and how much money they make relative to how much money their customers, their everyday customers have. And so I feel like philosophically they lean towards this like overly like hollow type of like caricature almost type of personification. And I feel like at Loop, when we were fundraising, everyone's like, "Oh, well, you need a mascot." And I was like, "No, you've been trained to believe that insurance companies need a mascot, but all we actually need is a mission."
And that's what you're pumping. I love that. So you believe in this whole approach to business because of the success that you've had and your ability to build your brand, which has largely been off of social media. So can you speak to like your progression through using social and the steps and the different endeavors that you started with that brought you to Loop?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a great question. My earliest days of digital marketing broadly, I was running my laundry business and I was mostly email marketing in 2012. So it's almost 10 years now I've been marketing. Um,
Mm.
and email was I think there's been a resurgence in email, but for the last like 8 years, it definitely somewhat died down. But at that point, that was the extent of my digital marketing. Then I kind of got into the creation of, into getting into creating content. And that was really interesting. Facebook at the time in 2013, 14 was not seen as a platform where you sell anything. I still remember like it was yesterday going to like one of these small business workshops and the teacher being like, Facebook is not a place where you sell. Remember, um, and that was true at the time. But I mean, I've learned now that people take what things are for what they are today, and maybe
Mm.
they don't care to extrapolate around the bend and see what these things grow into. Myself included at the time. But at that time, Facebook was all about the consumption. It still is, but it only had the consumption of media. It really didn't have a paid ads environment. And so as a result of it not having a paid ads environment, there actually, since there was very few ads and, it hadn't been hacked by Russia yet and Cambridge Analytica, all this crazy shit that we now know Facebook for, it actually was a space where you spent a lot of time on Facebook. You spent a lot of time
Yes.
on Facebook, consuming media, sharing media. There was a lot of like these web 1.0, these digital media 1.0 companies like Elite Daily and like creating all this like snackable, and BuzzFeed was crazy then. I think
Hmm.
like they're still relevant, but not as relevant as they were then.
For
And
sure.
so then I kind of wet my beak creating content. Um, and then I would say the next tier was around 2016 into 17 when Instagram really started taking hold of the culture. And it just like clearly became a place, a space where if you're a creator, then you have to play here. And in reflecting back on it, I think I was A, too young, and B, just unequipped to capitalize on what was happening on Facebook at the time. I was still so new, I was just catching my bearings. But I
Mm.
remember I sat down with my former business partner at Harlem Capital, and he was like, yo, you got to be on Instagram heavy. And it just like, it made sense to me because I had already seen what happened on Facebook, and I already seen how Facebook was like on the gradual decline. But that's okay. That was okay because I didn't have any presence on Facebook. So I said, you know what? Okay, let me go all in on Instagram. And I feel like I caught Instagram on the way up versus on
Mm.
Facebook, I was coming in on the way down. Much like how you're catching TikTok on the way up. You're going in early on TikTok, and TikTok has even more potential than Instagram. So it's going to pay off big for you. I went all in on TikTok or on Instagram, and I slowly caught my footing, and I complemented it with a lot of speaking and a lot of it was just my digital hub. And now over the years, I now have a presence where, you know, I can make my living entirely off of producing content on Instagram if I wanted. It's a secondary thing
Mm.
for me because I'll always be an entrepreneur first. But going all in on the right medium at the right time can significantly change the next 5 years of your life. Um, and I look back on that like, wow, I'm really glad that I made that bet. And by the way, I'm seeing deja vu all over again. And I feel frustrated with myself that at the rise of TikTok, I still only saw it like, it's this, dance thing. And you and others on my team were like, no, you got to go all in. And so I'm
Yeah.
making the effort to jump in. But um, yeah, and so that's really kind of been the journey. Of course, there's more to it, but
Yeah.
LinkedIn is in that space. Clubhouse is in that space. TikTok is in that space. I think those are the three best platforms for organic right now.
You just took one of my questions there, so that tells that you know the space. Because I was actually gonna say, what do you think are like the best opportunities on social? So you already answered that one. But so when you talk about building this hub that you've really developed for yourself on Instagram, like when you see a piece of content and you hear yourself speak and people are experiencing it right now, like you're very good at expressing like a story and telling stories and like educating and creating a transformation. For people who aren't, maybe they don't have that innately, what can they do to start posting content?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's less so about trying to back into a style that you see that works for someone else and try to figure out which style is going to work for you. Now, you're going to hear that advice a lot, and it feels overly generalized. However, the best way, the first decision that you have to make is that you want to produce content at all. Now, that seems silly, but I remember when I was getting started, I was like half in, half out. I kind of sort of wanted to make content, but I wasn't, you know. And so it's almost like if you just like half commit to the gym. It's like you're wasting your time. I've been there, by the way. You're wasting your time. You're at the gym. You're doing these lazy sets. You know, you're checking your phone. You're not really getting gains. You're not really getting stronger. You're just kind of wasting time versus if you can compare, if you've ever been in a mindset where you say, all right, I'm going to lock in on this. It could be anything. You get a lot more out of it, significantly more out of it in a shorter period of time. So your progress is going to match your intensity. And you don't get to build any intensity until you decide. You first have to decide, I'm going to go to the gym. And so in this particular case, you have to decide, I'm going to make content. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know which medium I'm going to focus on. I don't know a lot of things, but I do know that I'm going to do this actually. And then from there, man, experimentation is going to be your best friend. One thing that I can help you with is say, I'm a big fan of experimenting broadly. However, try and experiment on the platforms that have the most unique opportunity today. So, for example, I personally would not encourage you to experiment with producing for Facebook, for example. It sounds obvious. So take the inversion of that. Well, we just briefly touched on, well, what are the biggest opportunities right now? Clubhouse, LinkedIn, TikTok. Can you decide to experiment within these three realms? Because these are the platforms that are on the rise organically. And guess what? Once they mature, you don't get that organic spurt back. You just don't. Now, it's going to go away, but we don't know how long it's going to last or when it's going to go away. And if there's anything I can tell you, as now, you know, I'm 28, so I'm still young, but I'm old enough now to have seen a few of these cycles. And now I know when I see it, go all in on it. Worst case scenario is that platform gets irrelevant and you learned a whole lot. Best case scenario, that platform becomes the zeitgeist and you can capitalize big in whatever way you want, whether that means branded deals, whether that means building that platform to build your next platform, whether that means creating your own e-commerce brand, you name it. The possibilities are actually endless, but you don't get the luxury of having those options unless you have that platform. And it's much easier to build that platform when a platform is on the way up versus when it's on the way down.
Yeah, the early movers advantage is something that can be truly game changing for anybody who takes advantage of it, especially if they double down and do it the right way. But I love that you said that the first thing you have to actually do is decide, okay, do I even want to create content? Because if you do half-hearted output, you're going to get half-hearted results. So for anybody who's like who's like maybe on the fence, like why content? Like I know obviously I preach that all the time, but from your perspective, why create content?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, if I have to explain to you why, then I don't think that you must be, blind to what's going on. But B, I have no interest in convincing you. Because one thing that I've learned is early on, I did try and spend time convincing people that this was going to be it. And I felt that it was a massive drain of energy on myself. So then I asked myself, well, then why am I trying to convince anyone? And then I switched to, okay, well, fuck it. The market is going to decide. And if I believe this is right, then let me go execute on it. And so for anyone whom is on the fence, if you believe in your heart that this is the right thing to do, you have at this point ample examples that show you how content can materially transform your life. I would spend zero time trying to convince anyone, but I would spend a whole lot of time upping your skills and getting in the game, because if you believe it's the right game to play, you'll be glad that you jumped in sooner than later. And it can feel like you're jumping in late, but late and early is always relative. It's late if you're jumping into email marketing. It's early if you're jumping into TikTok. It's early if you're jumping into NFTs. It's early if you're jumping into Clubhouse and so on and so forth.
100%. And like I always felt like I've heard, I think it's Sean Cannell from Think Media. He's like, the best time to start on YouTube was like 2010, but the second best is right now, right? Like you can't go back and change that. You only have what you now know. So if you see an early opportunity, you got to move. And so we've spoken, and you've mentioned it twice now, about like the three biggest opportunities being, in your opinion, LinkedIn, Clubhouse, TikTok. Can you try to provide like a quick strategy for people who to use those platforms most effectively, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, the reason I cite those as big opportunities is because the organic is big. Yeah. So the strong benefit here is that you don't have to have a big ad budget for people to see stuff. And the more people engage with your content, the more people that follow them will see your content. So it's got some built-in virality in all three of these mediums. And so to that I say, to me, it's less so about like what specific subject matter you talk about and whatever. Just make sure you're talking about something that you believe in, and make sure you're talking about it often. And you don't have to be the expert. You can be interviewing people. If you're 40 years old and you have a ton of experience in a particular field, okay, be the woman that talks about it. But if you're brand new and you're 19, you can still build a hub by just interviewing people that know a lot about the space that you care about. But one thing's for sure, people will see right through you if you don't care about what you're talking about. And people will see right through you if you're pretending that you know what you're talking about and you actually don't. So those are two things that helped me early and often, and I still do them. I only talk about shit that I care about and people can tell. And at this point, I only say I know something if I feel like I have done it enough to know it. And if I don't know it, then I'm just taking a back seat, listening and asking and engaging and so on. So those are the opportunities, man. But interestingly, you, Ben, have a thesis around YouTube, for example, and YouTube is a very mature platform. So, just because it's easier to pop off in mediums that are growing quick doesn't mean you can't pop off in mediums that are at maturity and that offer a world of opportunity. So I think working with you has opened my eyes up to that. There's still plenty of opportunities, even in channels that feel like there's no room. There's still plenty of room.
Yeah. And because if a good platform exists, there will always be room, right? Because if it's a solid platform, that means they've figured out distribution and they're constantly getting new people and giving them stuff that they want. So I think YouTube fits perfectly into that category. Another one that I would say as closely there would be Instagram. And we've been on many team calls in the past where we've talked about the state of Instagram, and people have conflicting opinions. And so often it gets thrown around that Instagram is dying or dead. And I would love to hear your thoughts. I know you've shared it with me already on calls, but I'd love to share it with everybody else who's listening or watching to this. Is Instagram dying?
I think a lot of people would say yes, but I think if it's dying, it's a pretty slow death. You know, because like Instagram is just the cultural zeitgeist, man. I mean, I don't know about you, but I find myself just like when I'm just like meandering on my phone, I open it up and then I tap Instagram and then I'm there. It's like it is the hub where you go to see what your friends are following, who you follow, and all this other stuff. So A, it's still the cultural zeitgeist. B, most importantly, not most importantly, but just as importantly, the Facebook ecosystem has the most sophisticated advertising platform in the world. And from a creator standpoint, that's not as exciting, but from a business standpoint, it's very exciting. And so the fact that if you have an audience on Facebook, you can interlink it into Instagram and WhatsApp and all of the billions of users in Facebook's ecosystem, that makes Instagram audience very valuable. So I don't know if it's dying, although Facebook has a pretty good product team. Like, look how stories kind of took over. Snap is not even in the conversation. How about that? Snap was in the conversation, and now it's just like IG stories. What's Snap? So I'm never gonna rule Zuckerberg out because I think he's like the overlord of the world. But I will say I definitely think that I think that TikTok has proven that if you give people a space to just be purely creative, people will flock to it and really thrive in that medium. And I think TikTok is good for that. So while I'm betting on TikTok, literally deploying resources and people and talent and so on, I at the same time am still over indexing on Instagram, man, because it's just such a valuable platform.
I think that's the biggest thing that you nailed at the end there, where I think the biggest difference between TikTok and Instagram is that people aren't afraid to create TikTok content, where there is a little bit of that personal identity attached to the performance of Instagram content. And that's a very dangerous thing on a platform with diminishing organic reach, because that just means that naturally people are going to have less engagement. So then they're in turn going to feel worse about it. So I think that they're making strides by removing the like count and things of that nature. But like, I'm curious to find if they can find that sweet spot where they make it more of a creative platform. I think that could work wonders from getting the users back. But the business options there are so different compared to TikTok, because like we've had this conversation too, where someone can follow you on TikTok and never even have visited your profile. So it's like, what kind of relationship can you possibly build? Or they could follow you and never see your content again. So I think you're absolutely right. It's all about leveraging the momentum that's possible and then still focusing on the places that like aren't going to go away. And I see YouTube and Instagram, I don't see them going away anytime soon.
I have to concur with you. And the thing about Instagram, they're going to have to make a tough decision because they're a publicly traded company, and publicly traded companies are very short-term result oriented, because their results map to their share price and their quarterly earnings. And therefore, in order for them to do what you just said, which is to create a creator-friendly environment, they're going to have to increase organic reach. And when you increase organic reach, then you don't need to pay to play as much. So the only way they can increase organic reach is the de facto byproduct of increasing organic is people pull back on their spending and over index on the creation of organic. And by people doing that, because for example, if you can reach a lot of people organically, then you wouldn't put as much dollars behind it, right? Because you can just reach them by just posting. So by advertisers, by them pushing advertisers to their organic channels, I think it will help their long-term prospects, but short-term they will suffer a revenue dip. And that's truly the problem with companies going public, It's like
Mm.
it's all about shareholder growth and profits every quarter, and so that drives you to make shorter and shorter term decisions. I think Zuckerberg is one of the few public CEOs that does have a long term vision. However, I couldn't agree more, man. You got to increase the organic. Give us what we all want, man. We all want, we all want organic.
So if you had full control, you were steering the ship for Instagram, what are a few changes that you would put? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but what are a few changes that you'd put into play to try to fix Instagram?
Good question. Huh. I would, oh man, I would experiment with some uh pod like features. I think
Okay.
what Clubhouse has going on is very interesting. And I wonder if you can make these, I wonder if you can create these like pod like social environments where you can have uh, a 4 or 5 person live um, occur. I think what Instagram has is culture, and I think if they can find a way to create products and features around culture, that would be fascinating. So, for example, we already are listening to all these tracks and using like Spotify music in our stories. Um, what if, what if like our, it would have to be original content as I'm thinking through. It's like it's original content. I'm surprised that they have not made a bigger push into Instagram originals
Mm.
where DJ
Yeah,
Khaled interviews Drake exclusively on Instagram.
on Instagram. Yeah,
Like if they have the culture, why not leverage the culture and create original programming around it? That's what I think their big opportunity is.
that'd be sweet. Yeah, that'd be amazing because a lot of these like content hubs, they essentially become like production studios or like production assets, right? Like, I think that's where you look at Netflix, they basically become that, right? And that's why people keep coming back. And also, when you own that asset, it becomes
Mm,
exponentially more valuable for you because of what you can build off of it. So that's actually
exactly.
for a very challenging question. That was a good answer, man. So the next piece that I had was so with social media and like the stuff that I do every single day, like I help people build one person businesses all the time, right? Like they'll build their personal brand, or maybe even it's like a one person service business or whatever. What you've really done that I like really look up to you for is the ability to scale that beyond you. Like
Mm,
how does someone go about doing that very difficult process or starting that very difficult process?
100%, man. It is, and you're well on your way. It is a hard thing to do. I was a one man army for a long time, and several times I false started and had a team lined up, and like couldn't sustain it, to be honest. I was a one man army, and I knew that the team was the way because you can't expand without a team. And
Mm-hmm.
I got a team going, and I wasn't able to pay them for longer than 3 4 months, you know, or I might had a 5 month run, or and then so you go through these ebbs and flows where you're a one man person or you're a one person army. If you're comfortable at the level of scale that affords you, then that's great. However,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna come at a great expense of your time. And so inevitably, once your content takes off and people are consuming it, you're gonna want to expand. And to expand what you're capable of producing, you need team members to help. And in order to bring on team members, you often need money. Um, now, there's ways around the short term capital need. For example, you can build a production company together with your buddies and all co-own it. That's a very good way
Mm-hmm.
around. That's a very good way around needing cash up front. You have 4 friends. You decide you're going to start Riverside.fm, or in this case, it's a little bit different because it's like a platform company. But you decide you're going to start Riverside Studios, and then the 4 of you go ham, and so you effectively have a team without having needed to give up any cash, and you see how it goes. For everyone else who doesn't want to start like a production company, um, I simply wanted to create content at scale. The key has been, Ben, to develop a skill that can pay you a lot of money for exchanging that skill. For example, that can mean branded deals on Instagram, for example, right? So for one post, I can be transparent. For one like branded post, I'll make $7,500. Not a whole lot, but that it didn't start at $7,500, by the way. It started at $1,000. And when I would get $1,000, I would, pay it out to my video man or my editing guy and give them $500 a pop. And then I was back to zero, but I was able to get them going for a little while, a month. And I'll be like, yo, just hold that. Just like and the video that they're producing then allows me to go out there and find another branded deal for 500, 750, maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000. And so you're in this very tight period for a long time where I'm getting a small brand deal. And rather than pocketing it, here's the tricky thing. I think you and I talked about this one time. Rather than pocketing that little bit of money that you get, look, you're in Vegas. If you want to walk off the table with $1,000, amen. That's all you. But if you want to keep building your capacity, you put it back on the table and you say, okay, cool. With this $1,000, let me get another videographer. Let me get an editor. And so, or let me sustain the two that I have. So I played that game for a while, and then I ended up, over time, you build your skills, how good you are at that thing, and you start commanding more. So my branded deals started going from 1,000 to maybe 2,500, and they started coming more frequently. Then I started getting 4 or 5K every once in a blue. Then I got an agent. And there are agents out there that want to work for you full time. They sell you full time. They don't charge you up front, though. They only take a commission on what they bring you. So I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, sign me up. Here's the thing, though. You will only get an agent because remember, they only work on commission. So they're only going to take you on if they feel like they can sell you. And they only know that they can sell you if you've sold yourself. So if they see that you've got a few brand deals on your own, nothing crazy, you've gotten a few brand deals and you stand out in the market. At the time I was like the young Harlem entrepreneur, and I had the doorman story, and people were like, okay, like I can work with this. So then an agent takes you on. Here's the thing. An agent raises your rate because an agent, they get paid only 20% of what they bring you. So they're not going to do a job for $1,000 and get paid $200 for all that hustling. They're going to make sure you get $5,000 and 20% of that is $1,000. So the trick is to get it going how you can. Take the little bit of money that you have. Don't leave it on the table. Put it back into the game to keep your people going for as long as you can on your own, right? Eventually, your wage capacity grows. And in my particular case, I was also speaking. Speaking is actually the biggest one for me. And I like it more because I can go and do a 1-hour keynote and, bank 10 grand in 1 hour. Versus having to do a production deal. I'm like, fuck, I have to go do a bunch of shit. As you can see, I'm not much of a classic influencer. So it's all part of also figuring out what you like, because a lot of people love production. That's all they want to do. So anyway, the whole answer to your question, Ben, it was a nuanced, more exploratory view of like how this actually pans out versus me giving a cookie cutter. Oh, increase your skills. I showed you what it actually looks like on the ground when you're sweating, like making a bit, and so on. And then I promise you, for a long time, what occurs is you start catching your stride. You start making a little bit here, making a little bit there, but it's going just as fast as it's coming because you're growing your team. and you might have had some arrears in the past that you're getting current with, and and you're like, fuck, if you make $3,000 and you're like, sweet, I got $3,000, but then your videographer's like, bro, we're running on fumes on this Canon, like we really need the Sony. And so you close your eyes and you say, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna buy the A7S II, like I did with Hamway that one time when I had, like, I remember I made like I think I made like $7,000, and I was like, sweet, I got a little bit of breathing room. And he was like, bro, I'm on my last legs on my MacBook. I'm on my last legs on the Sony, and we need a fucking lens. We went to B&H and we bought it, and they're like the total $7,000. I was like, fuck, I'm back to zero. So if you go through that for long enough, you're building your chops, you're building your ability to withstand pressure, your ability to manage a team, and eventually your ability to also to earn. And then you hit a stride where your deals net you a lot more relative to the time you put in. And that allows you to build a team around you. And the last thing I'll mention is that as your platform grows, so too do the amount of creators that want to work with you, because they know that they're going to learn and they know that their work is going to be seen. And then it becomes a virtuous loop instead of a vicious cycle.
That's a bar. That's a clip right there. That's a quote card. So like from what I took from that, and I loved how you answered that, it's so imperative to have long-term belief and vision for everything that you're doing, because then it turns from what a lot of people would view as an expense is to truly an investment, right? Because you're investing back in for potential greater returns down the line. And if you believe in what you're doing, then that can pay off for you, which it obviously has for you. But so many people who watch my stuff, like maybe they're even at a point where they can afford a team. What do you think is the best first person to help you out if you're trying to build content, or like the first few people? Because now that I'm part of your team, there are people that are so valuable that I would never even have thought that a team needed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Facts, man. I would say the first hire is an editor. An editor, someone who just edits footage, will help you amplify your output, because number of reasons. For one, you can get a DSLR as I have right now and make that your main camera that you stream through on your computer, and the quality will be good enough such that you don't have to go and hire a videographer per se. So the cameras are good enough such that you can sit in front of your camera at home and jump on as many podcasts as possible, make your own podcast, just like get the volume going, right? But what will bottleneck you 100% is the actual taking that content and turning it into social assets that you can share on TikTok, on Instagram, and so on. So the very first hire I recommend is an editor. If you can commit to doing your part of the job, which is talking about your craft and uploading it to a drive, the editor will from there take that 30-minute piece of content and turn it into 5 assets. If you give them 4 of those in a month, then they're going to give you 20 pieces of content. All of a sudden, that's 1 piece of content per business day. And then on the off days, you can do an Instagram live on a Saturday, and you can do a straight phone photo on a Sunday. You've just gone from no content to at least 1 piece a day for all 30 days of the week with 1 hire. That is the most key. That's the most key. The next one that I would recommend is I really like a designer. A designer can then take those, they can listen through to the videos, and any cool moments that stand out to them, they can take a photo of you and then put that caption over it, what we call a BSU or a quote card. And then all of a sudden, and those don't take a whole lot of time. So then you can have them make 20 pieces a month. All of a sudden, you got the video 20 pieces plus the 20 pieces from the designer. You got 40 pieces in a month. Now you're just like, oh shit. Eventually, what becomes your bottleneck is the designer will say, look, man, I can't fucking listen to these videos all day for quotes. So then it occurred to us to find an annotator, someone whose sole job it is to listen through to the videos, timestamp them, and pull out the quotes and leave them in an Excel so that the videographer can go, or the editor, the designer can go and pull through the moments. Eventually, your team will say, yo, look, man, I'm loving designing these quote cards, but like, bruh, I'm out of images. Like, I need some new fucking heat. And then you bring on a videographer who records you, and from those recordings, you can pull stills. And then your editor will say, yo, look, man, I'm loving doing these things, but like, I'm fucking tapped, man. Like, I need help. And then you bring on a second editor and a third. And that's how the team has grown to what it is now, which is, and then we brought in an illustrator and so on. And now we're bringing on a motion graphics team, and this shit can get crazy. But I assure you that it started with just me. It started with just me doing as many parts of this as I could. And it goes all the way back to the beginning, which you and I, talked about. It started with a decision that I wanted to make content because I felt that this was going to be the future of the way people communicated, connected, discovered brands. It was the new clout. And I felt like an investment of my time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears. And I think I've done all three literally for this. That type of investment would pay off. And I'm really glad that in 2014, one of my friends works with me in Loop, and he remembers the day, because I was next to him, that I decided I was going to do this. And he always looks back to me and he says, damn, bro, I actually like remember that day. And I think a part of him wishes that he would have also started if he knew what it would have become. So, if you're listening, trust me, you want to be the person that thought about doing it and did versus thought and didn't. Because, this shit can reach crazy heights and we're just at the beginning.
That was powerful, man. That was awesome. I think that is the perfect punctuation to this conversation. So that was awesome, man. For anybody watching or listening to this who wants to get connected with you or see the projects you're working on, where would you suggest people go?
Speaking of Instagram, that's why it's not dead, right? Because I always direct people to my Instagram. So head over to my Instagram. I'm at John Henry Style. I'd be happy to connect with you guys. I answer as many DMs as possible, just about all of them. So find me there. Find me on Clubhouse. I do conversations. Find me on LinkedIn. Find me on Twitter. I'm at John Henry Style on every platform. Except, which one did I just recently snag John Henry on? Clubhouse, maybe?
TikTok? Are you still John Henry Style on TikTok?
I'm still John Henry Style on TikTok, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's how you know you're early, man, if you can just get your first name.
Yeah, oh, for sure, absolutely. But anything, wherever you guys want to find John, I recommend you going to do so. And it'll be linked in the description box of this podcast, whether you're watching it in video or listening it is down below. I just want to thank you for your time, John. It's always a pleasure to sit back and listen. And thank you so much for sharing some of your wisdom with all of us today.
100%, man. Thank you so much. I'm running into another meeting, but I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad we found time, and I'm glad you were patient as we worked it out.
Absolutely, man. We'll crush it in the next meeting. We'll talk soon.
My guy.
Peace, brother.
Be well. Peace.